Cool.
All right, we have a really great call today. I'm super excited to have our next guest on, Mr. Drew Donaldson, who has an amazing background. And Drew, we're going to get into a lot of different stuff because you have a lot of expertise in a whole host of different fields, and that would be health and nutrition, fitness, muscular training, which I really think is a big deal because, what I find is that as people start losing muscle mass, then they start opening themselves up to a lot of different issues. The body starts breaking down faster. And, every person in every walk of life has something that they can be doing. You're an expert working with a lot of, very high-end clients down in the Tampa area. So first of all, man, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining us. And tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story, and let's let the listeners get to know you a little bit.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. So I appreciate every opportunity that I have to speak in front of a new crowd. And like we were talking about off air, it's been my mission to get in front of as many people as humanly possible that might not have heard about a lot of the things that I talk about. And a lot of the things that I talk about are going to be concepts that people have heard of before, and basic things like working out and eating right. But the real way to do those things. And when you need to learn, or the best way to learn about how to do nutrition the right way, how to work out the right way, how to build muscle, how to preserve muscle, it's not following the best game plan. It's not, oh, this is the program that works. Because if there was the program that worked, if there was a diet that worked for everybody, whoever made it up would have instantly patented it, sold it, and they'd be world renowned as the expert. They'd be a trillionaire, and we'd have a giant shrine built to them in every city, and everybody would just do that. And the fact of the matter is, there's so many different ways to do this. I tell all of my clients that sign up to work with me one on one and people that subscribe to anything that I put out content wise, there's 10,000 right ways to go about this. Unfortunately, there's about 10 million wrong ways. So the way that we isolate the right ways and the most optimal right ways for us is to know how things work. Because when you understand what all the moving pieces are, then you can formulate an action plan that's best for you. It's just understanding how these things affect everything and how the synergy together is going to add up to put you in the best situation to be your best self, literally. So my background, it's one of those things where in the past couple years, and really in the past year since my podcast, DDT Method has launched and become successful, that I find myself invited on more and more podcasts. And I always start this with like, well, I don't think my story's that impressive. And then I tell it, and it's always like, okay, I guess that is kind of a weird story. And I guess for the most part, most of us aren't as impressed with our own journey as other people might be. But
Mhm.
I grew up outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and I grew up as a very, typical kid. I loved comic books growing up, still do. Comic books kind of turned into like an infatuation with professional wrestling as a teenager. I was very much a late 90s, early 2000s kid, and that was when the WWF was the most popular thing ever. And to me, it was like, wow, these are real life superheroes. These guys are all super jacked, they're larger than life, and that's what I want to do. And I was just one of those kids that grabbed onto that and was like, all right, no, that's what I'm going to do. And as I graduated high school, it was time to go off to college because at the time that was just kind of what you did. And that was, my family wanted me to go. And okay, that's just what I'm going to do. But there was no real way to major in pro wrestling. And I knew that was what I wanted to do. So I ended up at a school by pure happenstance. I went to Colby Sawyer College in New Hampshire, New London, New Hampshire. And it was a very prominent school in the worlds of nursing and in exercise science. And that's not why I went there, to be quite honest. I don't know why I went there. I think my parents kind of pre-selected it as a private school that I could get a couple scholarships to that had a good reputation. So they sent me there as a general liberal arts student. And I figured, okay, exercise science, that's kind of like pro wrestling. I know I need to be big and muscular, so let me do that. And that led on this just this snowball effect where I majored in exercise science. I got a job on the campus gym. The campus gym had a program where they would pay for your personal training certificate through the ISSA. So I got my first personal training certificate at 19 years old. 40 now, so I've been an active personal trainer for 21 years. So from there, I started working with students when I was vastly unqualified to do so. But, I was always pretty good at, knowing my limited scope and staying within that for the time. And at this point in time, tens of thousands of hours of one-on-one training. And I really do feel that in a day and age where the internet's the easiest way to make money in a lot of different worlds, there's a lot of coaches that run online businesses, and it's not to discredit them because there's a lot that are really good, but there's many that haven't worked with people one on one. And until you actually work with real people from real walks of life and you see the variety of people, personalities, physicality, issues, physiological attributes or detriments, and you learn to work with all of this, it's just not the same. So I was very lucky to kind of stumble into that from a very young age. Now, as time progressed, I collected a few more certificates, and I ended up getting scouted for and working for the WWE when I was 27, 28 years old. That ended up bringing me down to Tampa, Florida, under contract with them. I got to work with some of the best strength and conditioning coaches on the planet through my time there. And then when I got released from my contract at 28 years old, it was kind of, I don't know what I'm going to do now because this is what my entire life has been. And I've been personal training successfully, but that was really just to pay the bills until the wrestling took off. And it was just a situation where had I gone there and just done terribly, I guess I could have been like, okay, this isn't for me. But I went there and it went great. When I got released from my contract, they told me it was simple cost cutting. They had nothing for me on TV at the time, and I was good. I just didn't really stand out that much. So I thought to myself, well, I love training. I love building muscle, and I love just feeling like I could go and just work for hours, and I love having unlimited energy. So I'm going to make myself undeniable. I'm going to become the biggest, baddest guy on the planet, and I'm going to look like a specimen because I was a big guy, but I didn't really look like a bodybuilder or anything like that. So I figured if I looked like a Mr. Olympia, then they'd always have something for me because I would look unique.
Mhm.
So I set forth to build the biggest physique humanly possible to become undeniable. And somewhere along the line there, and I was getting different opportunities to make money wrestling. And I had gone back to personal training because, when you walk around looking like I looked at the time and getting bigger, people just, hey, are you a trainer? Do you work out? Can you tell me what to do? Tell me what to eat? So I did that. And somewhere along that process, I kind of fell in love with the process more than I was in love with what the end result was, what the goal was. So I ended up, because social media, YouTube, where right now it was, 2000, early 2010s, it was really becoming a thing in fitness. It was not yet even close to what it's become now. But I ended up linking up with a high level pro bodybuilder, Ben Pekulski, down in Tampa. We used to train at the Powerhouse Gym downtown, which is a very popular hardcore quote unquote gym at the time. And it was really just a social media thing. Like I was the pro wrestler, Ben was the pro bodybuilder. We'd link up for a few workouts. And at the time, Ben was starting his brand MI40. MI40 was basically rooted with the term muscle intelligence because Ben took a very methodical approach because he didn't have the best genetics in the world, but he wanted to learn how to become one of the best bodybuilders in the world despite that. And at, he'll never admit this, but 5'9", not 6 feet, 5'9", 5'10" if he's lucky. He walked around at like 320 pounds of muscle in the off season. A drastic extreme, but to be the best in the world, that's the type of tissue you need to build. So he ended up opening his MI40 gym in downtown Tampa. And at first, I was still traveling for wrestling, and that was still what I was going to do. And I was just a proficient personal trainer on the side. So I had collected a few more certifications at that point in time, but I did not plan on it becoming the full-time career because it was still going to be wrestling. And I picked up an internship at MI40. He had brought in two people that were very influential in my career, Cassim Hansen, who now runs N1 Education, which is one of the most prestigious certifications on the planet as far as just personal training in general, everything from nutrition to energy systems to biomechanics, which is another certification I have since gone on to collect. And Joe Bennett, who's known online as the hypertrophy coach, who has a tremendous platform in his own right. And I got to work with those guys and learn from those guys fairly extensively for quite a while, in addition to training with Ben at 5:30 in the morning every morning when I was in town. And then eventually those guys, Ben obviously stayed. It was his gym, but the rest of the staff was getting all these opportunities to move on to not necessarily bigger and better things, but bigger and better things for them, starting their own brands and becoming very well renowned in their own rights. And Ben was kind of left with a situation like, I don't have anybody to run the gym. So it became a conversation where it was like, hey, are you still doing the wrestling thing? At the time, I was like, I don't know what I really want to do, but I kind of want to do this. So, long story short, I ended up running the gym and I was the head personal trainer. I was doing 40 to 45 hours of sessions per week with everybody from, corporate CEOs to successful entrepreneurs to professional athletes, because it was not a cheap gym, but it gave me a whole lot of variety of high performers. And it was a sink or swim moment, and I swam, and I ended up hiring and training a whole staff, teaching camps and clinics on the weekends with Ben to people that would fly in from all over the world. Ben was running the Muscle Intelligence podcast at the time, so every weekend we'd have experts in every realm of fitness and longevity coming in to speak on his podcast, and I would have access to them. Got more certifications, everything from Patrick McEwen's Oxygen Advantage to Jordan Shallow's Prescripts levels 1 and 2, and a bunch of specialty courses. And then eventually, around 2022, Ben ended up leaving the gym. His ex-wife Amanda, who's a sweetheart, ended up running the gym, and Ben was leaving. He's back there now, but Amanda was running the gym, and I love Amanda to death, and she's a great business owner and a great person, but I was kind of losing my ability to work there with Ben one on one. And that was my learning and that was my growing opportunity. I was there to not only work with Ben, but I was there. So when clients came in to say, hey, I want to work with Ben, and they didn't know me, and Ben would say, no, 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 go work with Drew. That was why I was there. So I figured that would be the best time to go out and start my own brand and cut my own teeth. And that's what I did. And from there on out, I just started to focus a little bit more on nutrition and biohacking, longevity, supplementation, anti-aging. I had a hand in opening a few anti-aging clinics and consulting there. And my brand, DDT Method, continued to grow into a successful online coaching business. First, I did one-on-one biohacking, or not biohacking, biomechanics-based training from several different locations. And then I just realized I could have a bigger impact on people online. And I started branching out into the online world, and that led me more into the biohacking world. And from there, I just started working with absolutely everybody that wanted to work with me. And from there, I just wanted to teach people things. So I started putting out more educational content on all my platforms. And I started trying to transition my business into more consult calls, because then I'm not obligated to working with 40 to 50 people full time. I can work with even more people and try to solve problems one at a time. And now it's just continuing to grow that as much as humanly possible. So I'm a guy that was fueled by my own ADHD and a little bit of neuroticism about my own health. And I was very insistent on being the best at everything, which obviously you can't do, but I can be pretty darn good at a lot of things. And if I strive to always do that, then I can help as many people with as many issues as possible while continuing to improve and optimize my own life. And I can safely say, at 40 years old, I feel better than I did at 20 years old. And I want 50 to feel better than 40. And I want to be able to teach other people how to do that too.
I love that. Yeah, that is awesome, man. And it's funny because to me, that's an amazing resume. That's an amazing amount of work. And, the thing I really like about the story is that although we're talking about getting built and putting on muscle and being almost like a superhero, the one underlying thing that really is the core basis of that is mental fortitude, discipline. Like that doesn't come without mental fortitude, discipline, and the ability to push, and really like the mind is pushing the body's kind of coming along for the ride. And that to me is when you really it all shows. You can see that you've got the discipline. That's the first thing people look at when you come into a room, is like, wow, that guy. But everybody knows what it takes to get that, and that's why not everybody has it, because it's something that you have to kind of be able to persevere and say, look, yeah, this getting up at 5 in the morning and being at the gym at 5:30, that is not pleasant, but guess what, I'm going to do it anyway. And so to me, that's where the real strength and power comes through, is the power of the mind to put the body through what it needs to do to get to that point. And so I think that's the first, thing to notate is that that is really what we all want to achieve in life. And everybody has something different. The other thing that I really like appreciate and respect is that when you're working, and you touched on this, but when you're working with people one on one, you have to go in and look at exactly where they're at mentally, where they're at physically, where they're at age wise, how much motivation do they have, and you have to sort of customize what that person needs. And the beauty about one of the things we were also talking about is that that's not always like that's not like a one-time plan that you have when you're 35 that you're going to run through till you're 60 or 80 or whatever. That's something that gets modified and adjusted as you're going through life, as you're, changing routines or changing different things about what you're able to do, or, even your work schedule, certain things like that. And, you're dealing with moms, and you're dealing with dads, and you're dealing with, all these different people. But I think that, I'm surrounded by all this technology, but the goal is to really not need it because you're having some type of a breakdown, and being able to maintain a high level of physical fitness, whether it's through walking or maintaining, because on our channel, we've got people in their 80s and 90s. We have, young people in their 20s and 30s, but it's different for every person, and you adjust to based on what your body's able to perform. And I'd like to get your feedback on that, talking about some of the clients and some of the challenges, and some of the things that you're building, because you're building mental fortitude along with the fitness, and how you're going in on a mental level and a spiritual level to try to help get them to have a better self-concept, to get them to start looking better, which in turn I'm sure fuels them to want to start working harder. And watching those stories, because it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's a journey, but you're picking up these people and bringing them through this journey, and you're improving self-discipline, self-concept, all these different things. So do you want to get in and maybe talk about some of the things that you see, some of the things you work with, and the different types of clients that you've had over the years?
Oh, absolutely. So the biggest thing that you just touched on was being able to convey what you need to convey to a variety of different people. Because if I'm only good at working with professional athletes, then I'm not of much use to anybody that's not a professional athlete. And people that aren't professional athletes are much different than professional athletes. And there's good things and there's bad things, but you need to understand how people work. And I mean that in a variety of different ways. How do people physically work? How do their bodies work based on their life experiences, their injuries, their leverages? How does their body work? And then how do people work in that? How do their minds work? What do they respond to? What type of communication do they respond to? Do they respond to pleasure? Do they respond to pain? Do they want to be told to suck it up and work hard? Or do they need to be told that, hey, you're doing great? And different people will respond to different things. If I think of like, I'll go through the check-in calls that I had today. So I have a variety of clients that I do check-in calls with. Sometimes it's a Zoom call, sometimes it's a quick conversation, sometimes it's a text message. But just general check-in calls today, I had a full-time WWE professional wrestler. I had an NFL linebacker. I had a retired bus driver, and I had a housewife. So those were four of my random check-ins for today. I have active clients right now that are college students. I have my two oldest active clients right now are 79 and 84. I need to be able to work with everybody for potentially similar goals, but with vastly different approaches. When I started my online coaching service, I was kind of going through all these different fitness apps because now they have all these different apps that you can kind of white label. And I sign up for this app and they put my DDT logo on it. And then I just kind of like use their setup to communicate. And I was like, I can't do these because I talk to people different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, it's this exercise in the sagittal plane with XYZ level of protraction. Some people love that. Some people want to be told, do the thing with the push ups that we talked about. There's no do the thing with the push ups button I can click on somebody's templated app. So everything that I do is conversation based, and it's a conversation based on what the person responds to. If they need that personable connection, I mean, I might not be able to physically go there and hold their hand and walk them through it, but they're going to get a check-in video in our text thread. It's going to be a video of me in this office saying, "Hey, you did awesome last week. Based on the feedback that I've seen, let's work on this a little bit. That thing that we did 2 weeks ago, let's do that again because you enjoyed that, and let's try to incorporate a little bit more as far as like greens in our last meal. So let's get a variety picked from these vegetables, et cetera, et cetera." Then I'll write a recap and send it over to them. Sometimes some people just want, a black and white plan. Okay, here's your update. Here we go. I modified meals 2 and meals 3. Or sometimes it's, hey, here's your macros for the week. Let's get a little bit of micronutrient variety. I want you to try to incorporate these foods because they're very self-sufficient. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's the way that's going to be the best way to communicate to the person. So a lot of it is building habits. A lot of it's being able to build discipline within that person's ability to do so. So you mentioned before, sometimes it's about getting up at 5 in the morning, even when you don't want to, and going and doing the hard stuff. Sometimes it is, but here's the thing, sometimes it's not. Sometimes that extra hour of sleep is going to be more beneficial to that person. We all know how important sleep is. Sometimes the idea of having to get up and power through something is going to cause somebody so much anxiety that it's going to be more detrimental physiologically from them having to fight their way out of bed to go do what they think the hard stuff is. Because sometimes you just have to find a way to make it work. And sometimes it's a situation of like, maybe we're not going to work out this day. Maybe when you have a day like this, we just want you to find 10 minutes to go walk outside every time that you eat. So every time that we have a meal, I want you to set a timer, walk for 5 minutes. When the timer goes off at 5, turn around and walk back. There's your 10-minute walk. We've now mobilized a little bit. We've actually done something that's been clinically proven now to drop blood sugar as efficiently as a prescription for metformin. Go figure, just by walking 5 minutes one way, 5 minutes the other way. And we've actually gotten you significantly more active. You do that 4 times in a day, that's almost 4,000 additional steps. They have studies out there now saying that 10,000 steps a day will decrease all cause mortality significantly. It's about finding what works for the individual. And that's all based on how things work. I monitor a lot of metrics, whatever metrics the person can monitor, whatever metrics the person can send me, rather. That's information that I can use for feedback. And if people get caught up in one dogmatic style of training, I'll still train bodybuilders from time to time. And then I'll notice that, hey, when you do your bodybuilding specific isolation exercises, all your metrics are great. How come when I give you a jump rope or some battle ropes or a medicine ball and say do 20 reps of med ball slams as a 35-year-old healthy male adult, your your resting heart rate, or your not your resting heart rate, your heart rate goes up to 200 doing a simple task that I could have a child do and their heart rate barely moves.
Mhm.
So you're very proficient in one energy system. You're not very proficient in this energy system. Situationally, it might be something where it's like I have my client in his 80s. I need to build some muscle. Okay, you're not going to do what the 35-year-old athlete's going to do. Let's just focus on sitting down and standing up. I want you to sit in this chair and stand up without putting your hands on your legs. Okay, cool. Next week, we're going to do it 5 times. The week after, we're going to do it 10 times. No lie, this is an actual person. My buddy Mo. Mo can now sit on a stool that has his quads below parallel with the ground. So he's actually in extreme knee flexion. And he can stand up and sit back down on that stool 20 times, 10 times in a row. So that's 10 sets of 20 body weight squats in his 80s with a multitude of health injuries that were health issues that we're working through. You can train anybody to do fantastic things. It's just knowing how to build a program, knowing how to match that program to the diet, and doing it for that individual person. There's no reason that anybody can't progress. You just have to find the right roadmap and then following it with consistency. And sometimes that's doing the hard stuff. Sometimes that's doing the stuff that you don't want to do. But sometimes it's working smart, not necessarily working hard. And I shouldn't say that because it's always going to be hard work. But hard work is subjective. Smart
Mhm.
work isn't.
Mhm.
Smart work is finding the best way for the individual. It's
Mhm.
optimization. Hard work is where it needs to be. Smart work is what it needs to be.
Yeah, I love that. And the thing is that you were just talking about doing those squats. I'm not sure if you heard a statistic, but 1 out of 3 ladies that are in their 60s or over, if they fall and break their hip, they're never going to recover from that.
Hmm.
And that's really staggering to think that you might slip and fall. And that just the anxiety or the stress of that has actually got to be pretty intense. In some areas of the country, it's probably worse than others because, you being from Boston, me growing up in the Midwest, you hit those days and those times of the year where you hit ice and, there's all these different, things that are out there. But I guess what I'm circling back to is the fact that once you start losing muscle mass, then everything starts disintegrating or atrophy comes in at that point, and then all of a sudden you're losing your skeletal system is adjusting because it doesn't have to hold as much muscle, so the skeletal system is starting to thin out, and then you don't have as much padding, I guess is probably a nice word, that if you do go over, you're bone on bone. I hear this bone on bone all the time, but what happens when you're not using that part of the body? What happens when the legs stop getting the work? I mean,
Hmm.
I think that, Drew, one of the things that I find is really important, and I'm 59, I'm not quite 60, but I see that, people as time goes on, somehow age becomes an excuse not to do anything. And I feel like that is never legit, number one. And number two, all we're really talking about is modifying the routine, like what you just said with that gentleman in his 80s. And there's also a lot of science, and you can go into this if more knowledge, but the more leg strength and the more muscle mass you carry on your legs, it's showing. There's a Dr. Rhonda Patrick out of San Diego, and
Hmm.
she says that the more muscle mass you carry and leg strength you carry, that equals long life. So,
Hmm.
with that being said, do you want to just talk about that a little bit? And, you've got older clients, but, how important that figures in and, how that different types of strength training and different things that these people can do, including the walking, which is equally as good. How important does that play in, and how do you kind of work with some of the older people that are 50s, 60s that are kind of getting into those golden years, so to speak?
So at the end of the day, we have to remember that movement equals life. You
Hmm.
need to keep moving. So muscle is what makes us move. Muscles move bones. So that is what they do. So maintaining adequate muscle mass is going to be your key to being able to keep moving. You got to think of people like a shark, like sharks. A shark needs to keep moving in the water in order to survive. Otherwise, it can't adequately filter through. I believe now I'm going to start talking about marine biology, which I don't know about, but the sharks need to keep moving in order for their systems to keep kind of filtering oxygen or whatnot out of the water. I shouldn't have dove into an analogy that I'm not really proficient in,
I
but
love it, though.
they
It's a
need to
good one.
move to live. We need to move to live for different reasons, albeit, but movement equals life. So, yes, muscle mass will act as padding or cushioning against a fall. Yes, adding muscle mass and resistance training will increase bone density, which makes it less likely that you will suffer any sort of fracture upon a fall. But at the end of the day, at the very basic level of this, the most basic level of this, the more strong, dense, active muscle that you have on your body, the more you can move, the more you get up off the couch, the less likely you are to be sitting at your desk and you need to go get something over there, but like, back hurts. I'm not going to do it. I'll just get it later. It's those little movements in between everything. It's referred to as NEAT, your non exercise energy expenditure. That is one of the biggest things that drives metabolic rate. When your body gets tired, you might downregulate NEAT. You downregulate your overall movement. What's the best way to fight your body just getting tired? It's to have muscle mass. Now, when I say muscle mass, people hear the word mass and they think they need to walk around like Ronnie Coleman or Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that's not the case. You just need adequate lean tissue. And the one thing too, because we're touching on like falls and women in particularly, we still hear it every single day as strength coaches. Women always say, "Well, I don't want to be too big and too muscular and too bulky." You won't be. Nobody gets too bulky by accident. Sometimes, if somebody's very gung ho about gaining weight and gaining muscle, they overeat, they overconsume protein, they just try and just, oh, I need the calories now. And then they put on a little bit of body fat muscle. And then up, I lifted too heavy and I got too bulky. Nobody's gaining too much muscle by accident. Now, take it from somebody that works with a multitude of individuals that are endlessly clawing at an extra ounce of muscle mass, an extra gram of muscle mass. These are athletes, these are bodybuilders, these are people that extra muscle will make them more money, will feed their families. They are literally bending over backwards to try and add a gram of muscle tissue. I don't think the soccer mom down the street is going to accidentally grow too much muscle if she does an extra rep of bicep curls. It doesn't work that way. So we should always be striving to gain as much muscle as possible. I tell my older clients that. I tell all of my female clients that. That doesn't mean the female bodybuilders, the female athletes, that's a different realm. Just regular everyday women that just want to look a little bit more toned, look good on the beach, just have a little bit more energy. I tell them all, you need to lift like you're trying to be Miss Olympia. You need to lift like you're trying to put on all the muscle in the world. Because here's the thing, you won't put on all the muscle in the world, but if you try to, you'll put on the amount that you need and you'll like the end result. You're not going to get too big. So lower body muscle just carries with it more responsibility if you want to look at it like that. Lower body muscle is going to be more safety and integrity of your joints. What happens as we get older? We're a little bit more prone to hips, to knees, to even ankles giving us issues. What happens when that's the case? That's our lower body. We downregulate movement. Then it becomes, I'm going to park a little closer to the grocery store. Then it becomes, I'll get up and do the laundry later. I got to pee, but I'll hold a little while longer. That lack of movement is diminishing our overall movement over the course of the day. What is movement? Movement is life. We move less. Everything starts to downregulate. We're burning less calories. Our blood flow is now not as good as it can be. We're not circulating our blood as well as we could be. We're not burning through the extra food that we're eating. So it's all this chain reaction. It's a chain of events. But I can't stress enough, people need to find the way to train and to build and maintain that muscle that's adequate for them. There's no absolutism here. There's no, this is the best way to do that. It needs to be the best way for the individual. It needs to meet their lifestyle somewhere in the middle, at least at first. And then it needs to be put together in an intelligent way that they can actually move forward with and progress through. And then we have this amazing time that we all live in where we have all this technology and we have supplements and we have peptides, we have hormonal optimization, we have biohacking tools and technology. But wouldn't it be cooler to use that stuff instead of to mitigate issues and damage? Wouldn't it be awesome to be able to use all this to just get even better? So I have a history of knee issues, or should I say I had. I found a way to work around them. I found a way to heal them. I found a way to be able to just go about my life with absolutely zero knee pain whatsoever. I love the fact that I can use the red light panel that's behind me every single day to increase my nitric oxide levels and get extra blood flow to my knees, not so they feel better, but so they keep feeling good, so they don't feel worse. I like to sit here in the morning. I love to see all the veins in my legs pop out and look gnarly, not because I'm saying now I'm getting blood flow to an injury, but so I can say now I'm getting a ton of blood flow. Now my circulation's being optimized. Now I'm setting the table for melatonin production. Now my sleep in 10 hours is going to be way better. Now I just feel better as opposed to I have to solve this problem. Now, there's nothing wrong with solving a problem. We're all going to have problems. It's the unfortunate fact, we're not immortal yet. Winter is coming. We're all going to have a time period where things are going to get a little bit tough. And at that point in time, we can use technology, we can use supplementation, we can use corrective exercise. But in the meantime, we should be able to use all of this stuff to feel better than good, to feel optimized. I was mentioning before, I don't like to sit here and say, oh, I'm 40 years old, like 40 some old number. It's not. I can't tell that to anybody. Half my clientele would wring my neck if I made 40 sound. But I can say that I do feel better at 40 than I did at 20, at 25, at 30, because as I learned to make all this stuff work more, I've just learned to optimize my life to feel better. Now, don't get me wrong, because you did mention too that, as we get older, as we age, there's going to be different things that we're going to have to do. And like I said, winter's coming. We're all going to have time frames and bad periods physically. We're going to have illness. We're going to have things we're going to have to fight through. It's coming for you. And the best thing you can do is be prepared and be able to fight through it and bounce back from it. But there's no reason you can't set the table to be resilient later. And then the cool thing is, it's not all preventative. We don't have to do this out of fear, because the side effect, preventing what's coming later or pushing it back or becoming more resilient to fight it, is we feel great in the meantime. I
Mm-hmm.
can't do all the things I did when I was 20. I look at some of my old pro wrestling stuff, falling on concrete and doing backflips onto people and whatnot. And I can safely say, you know what? As good as I feel now, I definitely know that I aged, because I know I can't do that and get up and shake it off right now.
Mm.
Not like I used to be able to. But I'm stronger than I was then. I can run faster than I could then. I can run longer than I could then. Other than the fact that my body's not going to be forgiving of many dumb things anymore. I might not be as resilient against everything as I used to be. I know that I'm better. And that's not to sound cocky or egotistical or anything like that, because I know everybody can be better. It's just finding the program that works for them. And the program that works for the individual isn't the program. It's knowing what these things do,
Mm-hmm.
how to do them, and how to do them with consistency. The best plan for nutrition, for training, for biohacking, for optimization, the best plan is the one that you can follow with the most consistency.
I love that, man. That is just there's so many things to talk about. When you're talking about how people start getting, well, I always call it you're changing the baseline, right? So if you're used to getting up and doing a lot of walking, and then you start cutting that back and you say, oh, but I'm a little bit sore here, or all of a sudden the baseline changes, and now normal that was here is now over here. And now that becomes normal, although, staying and maintaining certain types of exercise or certain types of routines is always very important. The one thing that comes to my mind is the blue zone and the blue zones in the world, right? And one of the things that they found about the people that are living the longest is that these are people still going up and down stairs every day. These are people that are sitting on the floor and putting up and sitting up on their body weight. And these are people that are maintaining and being active and going out and gardening and maintaining some type of routine that's keeping them sort of in a loop where they're constantly doing like these small movements around, but it's constant and it's all day. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's, something that just from science going in, there's a really good special was on Netflix talking about the blue zones. But that was one thing they all had in common, was that they were doing steps, they were sitting on the ground, getting up themselves, a lot of little things. And we started absorbing too much of the comforts of life, maybe. And obviously there's a lot of those there, but they start sort of shorting out the little things. I love just the analogy of just parking, saying, "Hey, man, go park at the back of the lot and take an extra." I mean, that's such a simple task, but that's something that everybody, if not on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, probably making that decision 3, 4 times a week on something as simple as that and getting a few extra steps in. And I
Mm-hmm.
do also really appreciate that. I think everybody out there knows that professional wrestling is just going to put an absolute beat down on the body. That is not for the weak and the meek. And, you're really putting it all out there. You're not wearing pads. You're not, there's a lot of things that you're doing. And I think that there's a lot of documentation to show that, there's a lot of athletes that can damage themselves and take that into later years of life. But you at 40 addressing that and working through that and finding routines, technology, diet, exercise, whatever it might be, are addressing all those. So at the age of 40, like you said, you're running longer. You're actually able to do things at 40 that were difficult or not doing in your 20s. And for me now, almost hitting 60, I've been through some of those roads and some of those peaks and valleys where, Sometimes, you're just in a really high level of mental and physical condition, and then sometimes life happens, and then all of a sudden. But the beauty about it, I think, is that through the years and through the times where you're really pushing and really getting after it, you set a bar. You set a bar of what is to be expected mentally, spiritually, and physically, of what you expect from yourself. And sometimes you make the conscious adjustment to say, all right, this is not the time right now to worry about maxing out on squats. But you know what? I can still throw some weight on, I can still rep out, and I can still do something that's going to keep me in the flow. And then maybe now it's more about adjusting and getting into more of the cross training with the ropes, or doing other things that are going to, still maintain cardiovascular fitness and muscular fitness. And I think that's what really resonates, for me, talking with you, that when you're on the journey, it's really about keeping the march going and not giving up and not quitting, and not and making the modifications and keep moving and doing what you can do at the time. And Drew, one of the things that I do, and I kind of gave you a brief walk through the studio here, the place, but I sell very high end ICU beds, and I sell those to people that have a lot of really serious health issues. And I feel like, in the world that I live in a world, like we all do, of infinite miracles, infinite possibilities, and everything is possible. And I never cave in. I never accept the reality that's handed to me by a third party. I always believe that whatever I have inside me, I can make anything happen. And so,
Hmm.
therefore, I find that it's really important that, everybody with whatever position or whatever situation that they're in is able to do what they can do, whether it's in a wheelchair, whether it's, saying, look, I'm using a walker right now, but I know that if I can push through and I can start doing this, I can get rid of the walker. And it could be, a guy like yourself that's like, hey, man, I'm 40, but I'm still going to make progress, and I'm going to still persevere and expand, other parts of my physical abilities. And the whole thing always ties into to the mental fortitude, right? The strength to persevere, and the strength to look yourself in the mirror and be honest with where you're at, and know, hey, I can be doing better. I could be doing more. And I need to shift out of this new baseline that started here, where I'm really on point, and somehow it's drifted, and catching that and then bringing it back. And I feel like, with the conversation that we're having and getting to know you, that's the kind of thing you're doing to help people, is you're tuning in to where that baseline is at. You're looking at them and you're saying, look, I know that if I can get you moving and we can start adding things and working with nutrition or whatever these other aspects are, I can give you a fuller, happier, longer life. And that's what I really feel like when I'm talking to you. That's what I really feel is your mission statement. That's who you are as a person. And we talked about that before the whole thing started. But your goal is to try to get that knowledge and information, to get the foundation under you, so that that's all you do now, is you just serve others and help them in their journey. So with
Hmm.
that being said, I'd like to, throw that back at you, man. But it's really an honor and a privilege to have you on. I want to make this an ongoing thing where, we can do lives and people can ask questions, because you're the kind of guy that's been, very high on the top of the mountain. And that's a mountain that a lot of people don't get a chance to climb, but everybody wants to. But everybody has their own peak and their own mountain to climb. And, my whole thing kind of just, being with you today, is that that's what you're doing, is you're giving a roadmap to get to their own peaks and their own, mountaintop, where they can achieve the maximum potential for who they are and what they're able to do at this time in their life.
Hmm. No, 1,000%. And what you need to do is you need to look at somebody and you need to look at where they're at, and you need to look at what they're doing, because the sum of what they're doing is what is putting them in the position that they're in. And that could be a good situation, that could be a bad situation. So you have XYZ person that comes to you and says, I have this issue. All right, what's your day look like? What's a typical day look like? What do you eat? What type of physical activity and exercise do you get? What are your levels of stress like? What are you dealing with right now? What have you been dealing with? What have you dealt with in the past? So, what type of physical stress do we have? What type of emotional stress do we have? What type of person are you? What do you respond to? Do you need regiment? Does regiment give you anxiety? Do we want to ease into this? Do we want to jump into this? What steps do we need to take? And what levers do we need to pull? Anytime I start anything with anybody, I look at it like it's a control room. I have the same picture I visualize for everybody. It's this like futuristic looking spaceship type setup, and there's 1,000 levers in a row. And we have all the levers that we can pull to initiate change. And what most people do is they step into that room and they just start smashing levers because they want change and they want it now. They're sick of the problem that facilitated the need to change. So they're pulling every single lever. And then what happens? The entire system gets overloaded and it overheats. And then that's the end of it. We need to pull one lever at a time, maybe two levers in some cases. But we have all these levers. There's no reason to pull all of them because each lever is going to move you forward the same. So let's pull a lever. Let's pull another lever. Let's pull two. Let's pull another one. And in some cases, it's going to be a little bit of an overhaul, but in some cases, it's going to be very simplistic things. You need to find out what the root causes of the problems are. Are the root causes of the problems based on what they're not doing physically? Is it based on what they're eating? Because there's simple changes that you can make to initiate things along the way. That's not overhauling the entire system. You also need to find out why now? Why are they choosing now to change the situation? Because finding the things that are going to motivate the person are going to be the kind of N of one, what makes that person tick, what makes that person want to work really hard. Is it motivation because they just had a kid and they want to be around for the kid forever? Is it motivation because they just blew a knee out? They never want that to happen again. They want to get stronger. Why did those things happen? Well, not why do they have a kid? We know how that happened, but why did the knee go out? What was going on? So maybe they want to have kids, maybe they can't. I deal with everything from fertility issues to physical issues to all sorts of stuff. Like, what is the situation? If it's let's just look at the fertility issues too. Is that physical? Let's look at some blood work. Let's go get a sperm count down if it's a guy. Or is it because you have crippling anxiety and high stress levels? Because those two things are going to be drastically different. Like if you have a hormonal issue as a man and that's why you can't have a kid, we're going to address that entirely different than if you have incredibly high stress levels that you need to mitigate because you're driving yourself to infertility just because of psychological stress. We have to figure out what's going on. And then your training, your nutrition, all these levers that we pull, supplementation, biohacking modalities, technologies, these all need to be chosen based on what the individual person is facing. And that's why it's always been my thing. And I had told you kind of my mantra in business before we started recording. I need to be able to help so many people that I can make so much money that I don't have to worry about money. So 1,000% of my focus is just helping people. And over the years, I've made it to the point where I don't want to say I still have to worry about money. We all do. Like I don't have to. I'm comfortable. I don't have no financial worries whatsoever. I still want to be able to. I can't retire tomorrow. Let's put it that way. So I'm setting myself up to be very comfortable, but I still have to worry about money a little bit. So I'm going to drive my business because I want generational wealth. I want a safety net for my future children. I want a safety net for their future children. I want to have all the things that I never had in life. I grew up without a whole lot. I lived in a car for a little while as a teenager. Like, I don't want my future children, if I have children, to have to deal with any of that. So I'm a little over obsessive about becoming financially comfortable. But at the same token, I don't want to stress about it.
Mhm.
And I want to be able to set myself up so that's not even a thing in my mind. Because once it's not, then my whole thing is just how do I continue to put out as much information as possible? How many of these types of podcasts can I do where somebody might say, I want to give that guy a call? And then what can I do to set myself up to be in a place where maybe I'm not taking active calls for XYZ amount of hours, but that person can contact me and say, I have this problem. Hey, watch this video. I recorded something on this problem. Here's what you do. Oh, it's a cholesterol thing. Here's a 15-minute video on cholesterol and all the things that you can do. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, it's a stress thing. Here's a way to hack your sleep. Oh, it's a this thing. I'm obsessed with building up these resources that can just put this information out there to at least point people in the right direction because there are so many things that we can fix that aren't getting fixed. And that's my biggest frustration is I mentioned to you before on the phone, my fiance, my wife for all intents and purposes, is a charge nurse at Sarasota Memorial Hospital. She's going for a doctorate right now, so soon to be nurse practitioner. And she deals with some of the worst stuff that you can ever imagine. And whenever something happens, this story today, of course, no names, HIPAA, all that type of stuff, but it was a person that was this age that this happened, and now this has happened to them. And 9 out of 10 times, my first thought is that was so preventable. Some stuff is inevitable, some stuff you can't prevent, but there's so much stuff that we can. Like I'll say this right now. I'll put together a little document because this is something that I've wanted to do. You get a great amount of engagement on your podcast. Your podcast is spectacular. If anybody is watching this right now and they have borderline high cholesterol, leave a comment because I'll go through and I have a natural supplemental cholesterol protocol that I have used to completely obliterate bad numbers of LDL and triglycerides. And I'm not saying it's a sure thing. Nothing's a sure thing. I can't say that. And I'm not a medical doctor, but I have protocols for cholesterol that if it's early enough and we don't have any significant build up of plaque, can prevent a lot of bad things in the future. And to me, it's just like, oh, just do this, this, and this. But I forget quite often that, oh, that's commonplace for me in my world, not necessarily in everybody else's world.
Mm-mm.
But I can give you a combination of three supplements that'll take 20, 30, 40 points off your LDL. And most doctors will tell you that's crazy, which is baffling to me because I've seen it happen hundreds of times. And people in my world have also seen it happen hundreds of times. And this adds up to thousands of times. And that's such a simple thing. And that's one thing. But this information is out there. But like I said, there's 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 bad protocols that don't work, protocols that are dangerous, protocols that are just snake oil. But that doesn't mean there's not thousands that do work. It's just about being able to be pointed in the right direction. The information's out there. And some of us are just obsessive about being able to encompass it all and be able to just regurgitate it for free. So that's kind of my mission.
Yeah, man, I absolutely love that. And I can totally feel the passion. And, it just like the feeling that you get when you know you're helping people, it motivates you to keep doing more and getting better. So Drew, for anybody that's out there, like Drew just said, if you've got any questions, leave them down in the comments. And Drew, what's the best way for people to contact you directly?
So, a couple different ways. My Instagram is what drives most of my one-on-one coaching business. Now, the one-on-one coaching, I'm not taking on a lot of people right now. As we talked about before, I have a couple different business ventures, and I will have a large platform in the future for just general information. That one will be announced shortly. But my Instagram is DDT Method. My YouTube is DDT Method, Drew Donaldson Training. Just think DDT Method. And my website is ddtmethod.com. So through my website, I do have the option currently to book a consult call. That's kind of what I'm encouraging for the most part right now. One-on-one coaching, if somebody is very inclined, I might be taking on a few more people until that's discontinued, and at which point I'll continue to work with the one-on-one clients that I have and until we're done according to that client. But coaching calls, consult calls, I will be keeping those fairly indefinitely until my schedule completely gets blocked up there. The podcast itself, it's going to be very, very all encompassing. So I have podcasts. So we're going to be recording within the next week or so where you're going to talk about your world. I have professional bodybuilders on my podcast. I have professional athletes. I have people in the biohacking world. I have people in the performance enhancing drug world. I try to touch on absolutely everything. So the podcast, a little all encompassing depending on what you're looking for. But the best way to reach me is just DDT Method on all platforms. If you have an Instagram, message me. I might not get to it immediately. I get a lot of messages, but I will get to it. If you want to actually book a call and it's something where it's like, I have this problem that I need help with, go ahead and book the call. In the little form that has you fill out in booking the call, you can write down what exactly you want to go over. If it's a rare circumstance where I'll look at that and say, that's kind of outside my scope of practice, I'll just reach out to you and I'll just say, hey, I might not be able to help you with this, but here are some people that can. I have a very big network and I'm not afraid to say that's over my head. In fact, I say it whenever that's the situation. So DDT method on all platforms.
And I've been on your YouTube channel, and you've got world-class guests on there. I mean, really high-level people, experts in the industry, a lot of really good content. If anybody out there is watching this, get onto the channel, like and subscribe, and start watching some of the videos. And Drew, one of the things we do when we wrap up a podcast is I always like to give a guest like the final words or the final message, or kind of the last little bit there. But before we do wrap up, what is there anything you'd like to share, anything you'd like to say to everybody watching our video today?
So the biggest thing is we live in probably the coolest time to be alive. And I know there's a lot of crap out there. There's a lot of bad things happening in the world. There's a lot of things that are very upsetting to a lot of people. But we do live in a time where we have access to so much information. Technology is exploding for better and for worse. But there's never been a better time in human history to be able to better optimize yourself in your life and to be able to fix more problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want anybody that's watching this to think that they're hopeless, to think that they won't be able to lose weight or fix a metabolic disorder or even necessarily fix a serious problem. Because there are protocols and there are approaches and there are things that you can do that you have access to that will blow your mind. The technology that's all around you right now can fix more problems than even people in this world watching this right now could even imagine.
Yeah.
And there's a whole world beyond that of how to train, how to manipulate your internal energy systems. We didn't get a chance to touch on how the body creates ATP and ATP to ADP to AMP and cellular energy and mitochondria. There's a whole world of manipulation in that world, in that realm, that can extend quality of life, not just health span, not just lifespan, I should say, but health span. Not only living a long time, but feeling good while you do. Nobody is hopeless. We can fix so many problems. And even if you feel good, chances are we can make you feel even better. There's ways to do it. You just have to be relentless in the pursuit of the information.
I love that, man. There's so much synergy between your knowledge base and what we're doing here. And that is such a profound and beautiful way to end this podcast today. And that might be where we pick up on the next one, is getting into the ATP and doing all that. And for
Mm-hmm.
anybody that's out there watching, I'm going to have all Drew's information down in the description of the video. I'll probably actually have it right below our pictures here. And please reach out to him and ask any questions. And Drew, once again, man, I'm really honored to have you on. I greatly appreciate your time today. I can't wait to get you back on. And I just want you to know that this channel is your channel, brother. So anytime that you've got information that you want to share, man, you're always welcome here on our podcast. So thank you so much for your time today. I can't wait to catch up to you again. I know we're going to be seeing you here in Richmond sometime in the very near future. So thank you
Mm-hmm.
once again. Have a great afternoon, and we'll check in again soon.
It was absolutely my pleasure.
All right, brother. Thank you.